Now you got me thinking there's something there. you Hanyaker. God dang it. Is there something there?
Yeah.
Is there?
No.
No.
No. But you're going to feel like there is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. That is an everyday thing for us.
Yep. Just messing with Tara.
Everybody at work hates you for it too.
Oh, I know.
Look.
Hey, will you pick that up?
There's nothing there.
So, today was a request from a long time ago, I guess.
A long time ago.
Back when we had our old Facebook page.
Yeah, we had an older Facebook page. Unfortunately, it got...
Shut down.
Yeah, Facebook said, we ain't having none of that. So they shut our page down on us. I do vaguely remember. I also believe maybe... I really think it was Alan who had suggested this one.
Not sure.
I really think it was you, Alan, who suggested this one in like commentary when we were talking about underrated ones. And I got to agree, this movie is definitely underrated.
Absolutely. We thoroughly enjoyed it.
I really liked it. I mean, it was a little corny in some areas.
Well, of course.
But
1981.
Yeah, and that means this movie is officially as old as I am. It is a 40-year-old horror movie. Oh, this is 40. Anyway, Dead and Buried,
Yes.
directed by Gary Sherman.
And I'm just going to throw out there real quick, Robert Englund
Yes.
is in this movie.
Yes.
When we saw him, we're like, yes!
No, he plays Harry, a local towns guy. Doesn't really get a huge spotlight to it. He does get a few lines here and there, but it was really kind of cool because, I mean, it was young. It was young Robert.
And,
right around the time that they were doing the Nightmare on Elm Streets and stuff like that.
Yeah, because it wasn't too much later on that they started doing that.
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting to see him younger without all the Freddy makeup on.
It was
cool.
interesting. And he actually looks like a buddy of ours, and I'll tag you in the post.
Oh my gosh. And
like
the funny thing is when it's somebody that we work with, when we get to work, I tell his wife, oh my gosh, this is who your husband looks like. And she stops and goes, yeah, I can see that. He'd agree with you.
And he did.
And he really,
he really did.
I had never
hilarious.
seen it before. It was most amusing.
And it's got James Ferrantino.
James Ferrantino as Sheriff
awesome
Dan Gillis. Melody Anderson plays his wife Janet. We got Jack Albertson playing Dobbs the coroner. Albertson, like I was telling Drake, I do believe this was his last movie before he passed away. And he played the grandfather in the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Which I can't remember off the top of my head right now what year that came out.
Mm-hmm.
But this movie starts off right into it.
It jumps right into it.
Into what's going on, in which right away you're questioning. You're like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, it begins with a photographer out on the beach. And I didn't really get the feeling that the female he was taking shots of, I kind of got the feeling that she wasn't originally supposed to be there. She just kind of happened to show up.
Yeah.
They mentioned several times that he had come up from St. Louis. They brought up St. Louis a lot.
And they're on the beach and, doing the whole beach photography thing.
Yes. Potter's Bluff is the name of this little town. And when you think of little New England fisherman towns, I definitely think this place reflects what you would imagine it to look like. The stereotypical fisher town.
And so what's happening is he's taking photos of this chick and, telling her she's beautiful, yada yada. Well, then she starts coming on to him and kind of leading him into suggesting further actions.
Very suggestive talk, but never really right out there.
Right.
The innuendos are there.
So then when he goes after her to do such thing, he gets jumped by all these people. And I'm thinking it's a setup, like, hey, maybe he's a perv, he's done this multiple times, so I'm thinking that right off the bat. But then it twists right there on the spot.
They throw a net over him, which I feel really bad because I giggled some. Because how tight they pulled the net, it left him like...
It was actually quite funny.
We didn't quite get the nose thing like we did with the Blob, but it was...
It was funny.
It was very BDSM looking. And they proceed to douse him in kerosene and set him ablaze.
And you're like, what the hell is going... And they're taking pictures of him.
It gets weirder.
They're recording him. They're taking photos and of him dying.
Large spotlights, and it's very...
And right off the bat, we're looking at each other, and because the scene cuts away, and we're looking at each other, and we're like,
what the hell is that?
What did we just walk into?
Of course, the first thought that I had was they did a lot of shots of what the victim was seeing with all the lights and the cameras and stuff.
Yes.
First thought that came to mind, have mercy on me.
No.
This must be what a porn star sees while they're working.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like
That was the first thing, and I'll tell you, the lights around us do have a tendency to get pretty warm.
They do get warm after you've been sitting in a small area for a while.
It gets a little, whoo. And as we discover, as the movie moves on...
Very quickly.
The murders are all extremely brutal. They're very violent.
And they're all typically, after the burning situation, they're all typically aimed for the face.
Yes, they actually make a point to say, well, their faces had to be damaged. Their deaths had to be violent.
Which you don't find out till later on. We're kind of skipping a spot here.
But throw that tidbit in.
Yeah. So you have your local sheriff that is, I mean...
He's your typical sheriff,
small town.
Rational, level-headed, knows everybody, hey, hi, how you doing?
But then you start seeing the people that he's talking to were in this group that just set this dude on fire, acting like nothing's like going on. But, and so you're like, well...
He seems to be the only one who's not in on it.
Right. Which is weird.
It's interesting.
Yeah. But then they start killing random people. People that come in from out of town.
There was the young lady who was the hitchhiker.
Yep, the hitchhiker. Which they smashed her with a rock.
Yep, they bashed her face in with a rock. And then there was the family that had gotten lost.
There's the hobo drunk dude.
Yep,
in
the
fishing
hobo.
area.
That was the one that had all the fishing hooks and stuff, right?
I believe they used a sickle and a spear on him, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
But,
and they don't show the murder of the family. And like I had stated, I think that was a sensitivity thing. Because they had a small child with them who couldn't have been much more than maybe 5.
Yeah, 5
4,
to 7.
5.
I'd say 5 to 7.
I don't know. He was pretty short.
Yeah. But anyways, and every time they kill somebody, they're photographing it. They're recording it.
Yeah, it's super... it had a real creeper vibe to it.
And then... So the sheriff is trying to investigate these things. Well, every time he's investigating, you have the coroner, the one that brings the dead back to life through his work to be buried. And he's always right next to the sheriff asking questions.
Yes.
And this, that, and the other. And you get this weird feeling about him.
And it's the first place that you go to. Oh my God, it's the coroner. It's the coroner. First place you go.
Yeah, because he's asking all these questions. He's right up the sheriff's ass from the get-go.
Yep. And then the wife is introduced. Janet is a school teacher. So she's very prim, very proper, very sweet. Mm-hmm. Has an ability to match every single article of clothing in the exact same color.
It was hilarious.
That's
a lot of purple.
Hat, gloves, dress, and she wore this cape-like thing, her stockings, her shoes, all the same maroon color, and I'm like, I don't even know how that happens.
It was pretty funny. Well, some things start happening, and the sheriff is asking her certain questions and because somebody had mentioned that they saw his wife at the hotel.
He was following up on the missing photographer.
Yep.
Because it turned out missing photographer wasn't missing. When they found him, he was not dead. Burned head to toe, but not dead. So now he's investigating this. And his wife's name keeps coming up.
So he starts asking her, starts picking around a little bit. She basically is like gives him almost like a, makes him feel bad for questioning her.
Yeah, she side
Guilt
skirts.
trips him. Yeah.
She gaslights him. And
Yes.
she skirts around the questions a lot.
So then I start thinking, well, then she has something to do with this.
Yes. I mean, we were still stuck on the coroner thing. And it wasn't until her husband starts digging through drawers, comes across a wicked dagger and a book about witchcraft, that you start thinking, oh, well, maybe it's not the coroner. Maybe it's the wife. There's a lot of suspense. There's a lot of suspense with the whodunit.
A lot of misdirection too, because
yes, but it's fruitless misdirection.
Right, absolutely.
It really, and at the end of the movie, you sit and you look back at it, and it's kind of like it was crappy misdirection attempts.
Well, so you have the guy that worked at the hotel that actually saw the photographer that actually ends up dying. We're not going to tell you how he actually dies.
No, but it's a really cool death.
It really
was very neat.
But then he comes rushing into the sheriff's office, and he's like, Dan, like, I see the photographer. He's literally right next door, and you start seeing all these people that were killed by these mass groups of people.
Yeah,
they start turning up.
They just pop up all over town.
The gas worker, the delivery person, the milkman. Like, they start filling in jobs that are in the town.
And it's unusual to me because you would think the sheriff, having lived there, would notice new faces, and that's part of that plot hole I was talking about.
Yep. Yeah, there are a couple of them.
How is he not noticing that these are new faces?
Right.
And even knew the gas station attendant by name.
Right.
So it was like, okay, that
he didn't introduce himself.
Yeah, it was a little bizarre. Now this did end up developing quite a cult following behind it, and I think a lot of it does have that kind of creep factor.
It really does.
Even after 40 years, it has a creep factor to it.
Then you start getting some questions answered.
Yes.
And stuff starts coming up.
The sheriff is finally starting to really dig into this, and it starts with a hit and run.
Yep.
And he wasn't the one who ran. It's the person he hit that got up and ran, but not before grabbing his arm not before grabbing his arm out of the grill of the sheriff's vehicle.
And so the sheriff sees this arm like sitting there moving. Guy whacks him over the head. Sheriff's getting knocked out. He grabs his arm, takes off running,
and then proceeds to lead us through the most drawn out chase. And I put quotation marks there because you don't see the victim again.
Yeah, there's no chase.
It was very strange.
And I even said when we were watching it, I'm like,
why would he continue on?
This guy is literally going through another building, searching for someone that he doesn't know what they look like. It's in a building that he doesn't know. Like, why is he going so far after this dude in the middle of the night? Like,
yeah, it's really, really strange.
So then the sheriff gets the clever idea to run a blood sample off the blood that's on his grill.
Yes.
Takes it to the doctor guy. I can't remember his name.
He too is another death, and his death was his was pretty epic.
It was acid.
It was pretty epic. They plugged up his nostrils and poured acid down his throat.
And you watch his face bubble.
Now, after having watched The Blob, I expected more.
Absolutely.
When we saw it was acid, I expected more, and it did not deliver.
Nope, The Blob definitely made that expectation of acid deaths way up here.
Yes, and I think that set the bar pretty damn high.
Absolutely.
and I'm not going to be satisfied with any of those types of deaths in the older films.
Absolutely. The Blob was definitely a good one.
It wasn't any less appreciated, though.
No, absolutely.
No.
But because of the doctor running these blood samples, this is when the sheriff, again, gets this evidence and the little thing in the back of his head telling him, making him question reality, is that the doctor explains to him, like, hey, this blood came from something that's been dead for several months, at least 3 to 4.
And of course, he just hit this being
that
a night or
walked.
2 before that got up and took off. So he sits there and naturally says, "Are you sure?
Are you drunk?"
Yeah, like are you absolutely sure?" But he doesn't really come clean with the doctor that he's the one who hit this person.
Right, not till later on, and then he explains, like, that there's no way that this person was dead when...
Exactly.
And this is when he starts questioning the living dead scenarios, and, can you bring the dead back to life? And this is when he starts talking to the coroner more, and things...
And the twist ending starts to come in.
Yep.
He...
Spoiler alert, by the way, spoiler alert.
Major spoiler alerts. He discovers that he's basically living in a town full of the living dead.
Yep, that have all been pre-programmed once they've been brought back to life on their jobs and duties and what they're supposed to do.
Exactly.
All on repeat.
And oddly enough, I really had some disappointment because they don't quite explain, it was the coroner, how the coroner did it.
Yes, because he said that it'll go with him to his grave.
But they do point out that he was insulted that the sheriff's wife was convinced he was using witchcraft.
Right.
So we know it wasn't some voodoo hoodoo stuff.
Right.
So how did he...
They never explain it.
It left this huge gaping hole full of questions, and for me, that's another plot failure.
Well, and another one is that he explained that the sheriff's wife he gave to the sheriff as a present because the bodies decay over time, in which the coroner then has to...
He does a lot of upkeep. Yeah.
In which the sheriff's wife is one of the few... Actually, she's the only one.
She was his prize.
She was the first.
And she was his special one. She needed less upkeep.
Yep. And then you find out through some situations that happened throughout the movie that the sheriff himself
is also part of the living dead. Like I said, there were a lot of things that were disappointing, though. Why didn't Dobbs just tell the sheriff in advance? Why did he humor the sheriff and let him continue investigating?
Well, why didn't he program him like he did everybody else?
And that's another question I had.
He basically wiped his memory and had him living this life, but then had him questioning everything. It's just, it didn't make sense that the sheriff was the only one that was boggled by what was going on when everybody else was in line and knew what to do. It just didn't make sense.
There was a scene where I actually started to feel some sympathy for one of the zombies.
Which one?
When Janet realizes what she is after her husband shoots her several times, she begins to realize, oh my God, I'm dead. I'm dead. Goes to an open plot and begs him to bury her.
Yep. That was...
That kind of pulled at my heartstrings a little bit.
That was a crazy scene.
As he is sorrowfully burying his wife alive.
Who is alive.
And the townspeople are coming up telling him, we're so sorry, we're so sorry. And she's just, I love you, thank you, thank you. It kind of hurt a little. I was a little upset.
And that's where the movie ends.
Yeah, it concludes with the sheriff realizing what he is. There's so many questions.
I'm satisfied, but I'm not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the movie was good, but it left more open-ended questions than anything. The gore to be gore was great.
There was some pretty good gore to it. The suspense was there.
For 1981, it was decent.
The creep factor definitely there. It kept you on edge with the well, who did it? So you're kind of pinging, and
Yep.
I like that it makes you question. But there were some things that just
didn't add up.
They can't be ignored. Like, if I were to grade this the way you were going to grade a math paper,
like we do every movie,
I'd give it a C+. Maybe a B.
A for effort.
I don't know.
It's definitely a C for effort.
Yeah.
So I'm giving this one a 3 out of 5.
I am definitely going to go on your side with that one. I'm going to say a 3 on it.
It wasn't.
I wasn't
great,
dissatisfied,
but I was right. But I wasn't unhappy.
I expected a little bit more, though. I really did.
But we're not saying it's a bad movie.
No,
It is-
because
it is-
IMDb gave it a 6.6 out of 10.
Yep.
Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 76%, and Metacritic, I hate that word so much, gave it a 71%.
Yeah, it did
so
good.
it has good ratings.
It did good.
And I see why it has such a strong following.
And it's free on Prime, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes, we found
Free
this
on
free
Prime.
on Amazon Prime.
Yep. So again, 3 out of 5 for me. Good movie, worth
Yes.
watching.
Definitely worth watching.
And it's one of those that you can definitely play in the background for noise entertainment value.
Yes.
I mean, it really is. Again, not a bad movie, just not one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's not one I'd watch again. But I'm glad I watched it the first time.
Like I said, I wouldn't mind watching it again, but it's not my go-to.
So, Dead and Buried, 1981. Gary Sherman is the director, starring James Ferrantino, Melody Anderson, Jack Albertson, Robert Englund, Christopher Allport. Please look it up, watch it, see what you think. Maybe you might like it a little bit more than we did. Thank you so very, very much for coming back, and every one of you have an extremely pleasant nightmare.